Hey guys, tonight we're going to journey back to a world that is both deeply alien and intimately our own, to witness the very first stories of humanity, stories written not in books, but in bone. Imagine, we are standing on the high plains of what will one day be called South Africa. The year is 2.8 million years before your time. The air is warm and dry, carrying the scent of dust and crushed savanna grass. The mountains on the horizon are familiar, yet the landscape before you is teeming with a cast of characters long since vanished. Herds of three-toed horses, elephants with shovel-shaped tusks, and predators that make today's lions look like house cats. Before you lies a world not yet dominated by humanity, but one where our story is just beginning. But in that vast, dangerous landscape, a familiar shape appears. It's a troop of small, upright figures foraging among the scrub brush. They are Australopithecus africanus, and in their posture, their hands, and their deep social bonds, you can see the faintest echo of us. One of them is a child, no more than 3 years old, clinging to its mother's leg. Over the course of its short life, it has learned the rhythms of this world. It has felt the terror of a saber-tooth's roar, tasted the sweetness of a dug-up root, and huddled close to its family as the strange, cold stars emerged in the night sky. For millions of years, this creature's lineage has survived by learning, adapting, and above all, by looking out for danger on the ground. But what secrets does this ancient world hold about our deepest, most primal fears? Was the greatest threat the one you could see, or the one you never saw coming? And what if the most terrifying monster in this world didn't have claws but wings? Thanks to a remarkable discovery made in a limestone quarry nearly a century ago, tonight we will venture into this lost world to find the answers. Frankly, if you were dropped here without a group to protect you, you wouldn't survive a single second to realize where you went wrong. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. That small click sends a big signal to the algorithm that long-form, serious educational content still matters. And to me, it's an incredibly meaningful show of support. Thank you so much for helping keep this channel going strong. It always fascinates me to see where you're all tuning in from. Let me know in the comments where you are in the world and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are that child. Your world is a mosaic of sensations. The coarse, dry grass tickles your ankles as you follow your mother. Her scent is the definition of safety. Your universe is about 3 feet tall, a jungle of stems and rocks. Above, the sky is a vast, empty blue canvas. You've learned the important sounds, the crack of a twig that means a browser is nearby, the low grumble that signals a distant threat, and the reassuring calls of your own kind. The danger, you have been taught, comes from the tall grass. It comes from the watering hole. It's a flash of teeth and a roar that shakes your very bones. No one ever told you to look up. Your mother is an expert forager. Her attention is focused on a promising patch of earth, her powerful fingers digging for nutritious tubers. For just a moment, a single, fateful moment, her focus is down, not around. You wander a few feet away, distracted by a colorful beetle crawling up a stalk of grass. In that moment, a shadow passes over you. It's impossibly fast, a fleeting flicker of darkness, not large enough to be a cloud. There is no sound, no warning cry. High above, the world's most efficient primate killer has been watching. It is an ancestor of today's African crowned eagle, a bird of prey so large its wingspan can stretch over 6 feet. Its eyes, many times more powerful than your own, have been locked onto you for minutes, waiting for this exact moment of separation. Modern crowned eagles are notorious for hunting monkeys, and their technique is one of brutal, aerodynamic perfection. They are known to dive so powerfully that the impact alone can crush their victim's skull. Sometimes they don't even bother carrying the whole body away. They just use their sharp, curved beaks to rip the skull open and feast on the brain. This is the creature now descending upon you. The world becomes a blur of wind and force. There is a sudden shocking pressure, a sense of being seized by something unearthly. The last thing you see is the ground rushing away from you. The talons, thick as your own fingers and tipped with black daggers of keratin, are the source of this pressure. 2 of them find a purchase in the soft tissue of your eye sockets, punching through with surgical precision. It is the most secure grip and the most devastating. This single terrible event was lost to time for 2.8 million years, until 1924, when a quarry worker in Taung, South Africa, found a small fossilized skull embedded in a piece of limestone. That skull, which became known as the Taung child, was sent to a young anatomist named Raymond Dart. This discovery became one of the most important in the history of paleoanthropology, as it was the first major hominin fossil found in Africa, cementing the continent as the cradle of humanity when everyone else was looking to Asia. But the skull held a darker secret. Raymond Dart initially noticed the damage, but his mind was on proving the fossil's human ancestry. He, and many after him, developed what was called the killer ape theory, suggesting our ancestors were inherently violent creatures. But later analysis revealed the truth. When scientists compared the specific damage on the Taung skull, the 2 distinct puncture marks inside the orbits, the small scratches on the cranium, it was a perfect match for the forensic signature left by a large bird of prey. The scientific evidence was undeniable. This child wasn't a killer. It was prey. The demon that snatched it was not a monster from a cave, but one from the clear blue sky. Even today, paleontologists still argue whether the eagle consumed the child on the ground where it struck, or if it was strong enough to haul its prize back to a high, secluded nest, where the skull eventually fell and began its long journey to becoming a fossil. Either way, yours was a death that reshaped our understanding of the fears that haunted our ancestors. You survived that time. Your lineage did anyway. 1 million years pass in the blink of an eye, and your form has changed. You are taller now, your brain larger, your hands more adept. You are Homo habilis, the handyman, and in your grasp, you can hold a new kind of power, a sharpened stone. You can butcher a carcass, crack open a bone for its marrow, and defend yourself with a ferocity your ancestors could never muster. You have climbed a rung on the great, brutal ladder of life. But the world has grown new monsters to match your new mind. The landscape has shifted. You now find yourself in the lush, humid basin of Olduvai Gorge in modern-day Tanzania. The air here is thick, heavy with the smell of damp earth and rotting vegetation. It's a paradise of life, which means it is also a paradise of death. Your greatest enemy is no longer in the sky, but hiding in plain sight, beneath the murky, deceptive surface of the water. Thirst is a primal commander. It overrides caution. It drives you to the water's edge, a place your instincts scream is a trap. The shoreline is a churned-up mess of mud and prints from the great beasts who have come to drink. You crouch low, your stone tool clutched in one hand, your eyes scanning the still brown water. You see a log floating a few dozen feet away, half submerged and covered in green algae. Nothing else moves. The air is still, buzzing with insects. You lower your head, cupping the water with your free hand, your heart hammering against your ribs. The log explodes. It is not wood, it is scales and teeth and a fury born of eons of ambush. You are looking at Crocodilus thorbjarnarsoni, the largest true crocodile to have ever lived. At 25 feet long and weighing over 2 tons, it is a creature of pure reptilian violence. Before your larger brain can even process the threat, its jaws, lined with teeth like railway spikes, clamp down on your left leg. The pressure is unimaginable. Today, its smaller descendants have the most powerful bite force of any living animal, capable of snapping bones like twigs. The jaws of this titan are in a league of their own. You feel a sickening crunch as the conical teeth puncture your tibia, leaving massive, gaping holes in the bone. There is a twist, a horrific thrashing motion designed to dismember, and your leg is torn from your body. The pain is a white-hot supernova that obliterates all thought. You are thrown back into the mud, screaming, a ragged stump where your leg used to be. The monster has retreated with its prize, but you are doomed. In this hot, mucky wetland, a wound like this is a death sentence from blood loss or infection, even if nothing else finds you. But of course, something else finds you. Your cries, the scent of blood, are a dinner bell in this savage garden. As you try to push yourself up to crawl away, you sense a new presence. It is low, silent, and feline. Out of the reeds pads a creature like a leopard, but larger, its muscles coiled like springs. It has been watching, waiting for the crocodile to finish, and now it sees an easy meal. You try to turn, to raise your stone tool, but your body is broken and unresponsive. The cat is not interested in a fight. It lunges, not for your flailing arms, but for the back of your head. Its own hunting instincts are as old as the crocodile's. It bites down, its canines seeking the base of your skull to sever the spinal cord. In its haste, its teeth scrape along your parietal bone, leaving behind long, parallel grooves. Another forensic signature, as clear as a fingerprint etched into your skull. This second attack is the last thing you ever feel. Researchers who found your scattered remains, designated OH7, would piece together this almost unbelievable story. They found the puncture marks on your leg bone and the scrape marks on your skull, 2 distinct stories of predation on a single individual. The scientific evidence of your horrific end was irrefutable, but the exact sequence remains a topic of fierce discussion. Researchers still debate whether this was a simultaneous attack, a chaotic struggle where you were literally the rope in a tug-of-war between 2 of the world's deadliest predators, or if it was 2 separate tragic events, the crocodile striking first, and the cat moving in to finish the job. Either way, yours was a death of extraordinary misfortune, a reminder that for all your new intelligence and tool-making skill, you were still made of very soft, very edible flesh. Another 1,000,000 years drift by. Your kind has walked out of Africa. You are now Homo erectus, the upright man, and you are a master of this planet in a way your predecessors could only dream of. You have conquered new continents, adapted to new climates, and your hands now fashion beautiful, symmetrical stone axes of the Acheulean tradition. You may even have a tentative control of fire, a flickering god to keep the darkness and the cold at bay. You are a true pioneer, a force to be reckoned with. But every new world has its own set of monsters, and you have just walked into the territory of a beast that will haunt your kind for 100,000 years. The stage for this new struggle is a hillside in what is now Zhoukoudian China, roughly 500,000 years ago. Before you is the mouth of a large limestone cave, a prime piece of prehistoric real estate. It offers shelter from the biting winds and the lashing rain. But as you draw closer, the smell hits you. It's the thick, cloying stench of decay, of old blood and splintered bone, a smell that screams of slaughter. This is not a home. This is a charnel house, and you are not the owner. You are the trespasser. The true master of this place is Pachycrocuta brevirostris, the giant, short-faced hyena. To picture this animal, you must erase the image of the stooping, scavenging hyenas of modern Africa. Pachycrocuta stood 3 feet tall at the shoulder and weighed over 300 pounds, making it a rival for a lioness in size. Its power was concentrated in its massive head and neck, a biological sledgehammer designed to support the most powerful jaws in the mammalian world. Unlike its modern cousins, this was no mere scavenger content with leftovers. The sheer size and power of Pachycrocuta strongly suggest it was an apex predator, a capable and intelligent pack hunter. At dusk, the hills would echo with their unsettling whoops and cackles, a sound that would chill the blood of any creature that knew what it meant. Your people live in the shadow of these beasts. You are in direct competition for kills and for shelter. Sometimes, with your numbers and your fire, you can drive them away from a carcass. But often, the roles are reversed. You are standing at the edge of your camp as the sun bleeds across the horizon. The fire is crackling, a small circle of warmth and light against the encroaching gloom. A member of your group has wandered just a few dozen yards away, perhaps to gather more firewood. A mistake. From the shadows, several pairs of eyes are watching. The attack is a coordinated storm of teeth and muscle. The hyenas do not engage the group. They target the straggler, their pack tactics honed to perfection. You hear the shout of alarm, the sudden panicked flight. The chase is short. The giant hyenas are relentless runners. They don't go for a clean kill bite to the neck. Their method is far more horrific. They attack the legs and the belly, their crushing jaws snapping bone and tendon, immobilizing their victim. The end is a nightmare of being torn apart, a death of 1,000 bites, conscious for most of it. The pack then drags the remains back to their den, back to that cave on the hillside. For decades in the 20th century, the narrative of this cave was completely different. When the first fossils of Homo erectus, famously nicknamed Peking Man, were found there, scientists celebrated it as one of the earliest human homes. They found stone tools and what they thought were layers of ash from ancient hearths, and they imagined your people living there for generations. The narrative of this cave has flipped entirely. Scholars once argued it was a human hearth, a sanctuary. But a closer look at the bones told a darker story. The ash layers turned out to be organic sediment, and the human bones themselves were the most damning evidence. Of the remains of more than 40 individuals found in the cave, a staggering 67% showed signs of predator damage. Skulls were crushed, femurs were splintered, and countless bones bore the distinctive puncture marks and gnawing patterns of a hyena's teeth. The cave was not your home. It was their pantry. This realization transformed our understanding of your life here, recasting you from a mighty cave dweller to a prey animal struggling to survive against a dominant predator. In a tragic loss to science, the original Peking man fossils were all lost during the chaos of World War II, but detailed casts and subsequent discoveries at the site have allowed the story to be told. It is a sobering reminder that even for a species as successful and widespread as yours, the top of the food chain was a contested and dangerous place to be. While your direct ancestors, the Homo line, were spreading across the globe, you had other cousins who took a different evolutionary path. To witness their fate, we must step back in time, back to the familiar landscape of East Africa around 1.8 million years ago. You are not the adaptable, tool-wielding Homo habilis anymore. You are a different experiment in being human. You are Paranthropus boisei, the nutcracker man. And you are a powerhouse. Your body is stocky and immensely strong. Your face is wide and dished, dominated by enormous cheekbones that anchor the most powerful chewing muscles of any primate that has ever lived. A ridge of bone, a sagittal crest, runs along the top of your skull, a further attachment point for this muscular machinery. Your molar teeth are gigantic, 4 times the size of a modern human's, and they are coated in the thickest dental enamel of any known hominin, an adaptation for a life spent crushing and grinding the toughest, most fibrous foods the savannah has to offer. You are a biological nutcracker, a specialist built to thrive on a diet no one else could manage. In a world of generalists, you are a master of one trade, and your sheer robustness makes you feel almost invincible. But every fortress has a weakness, and every specialist has a predator that learns to exploit its patterns. Lurking in the same woodlands where you forage is a killer perfectly suited to dismantling a creature like you. It is not a brute force attacker like the giant hyena, but a silent assassin. It is Dinophilis, a species of false saber-tooth, whose name fittingly means terrible cat. Unlike the more famous Smilodon, with its long, delicate fangs, the canines of Dinophilis are shorter, flatter, and far more robust, like stout daggers. This was not a cat built for slashing and bleeding its prey out. This was a cat built for a precise, powerful, and swift kill. Fossils of this creature are often found in caves, leading to its other nickname, the cave cat, and suggesting a chilling habit of dragging its kills back to a secluded lair to be consumed in peace. You are on your knees, your powerful hands digging at the hard, sun-baked earth to unearth a patch of fibrous tubers. Your attention is consumed by the task, and the rhythmic crunching and grinding of your massive teeth echoes in the quiet air. It is this sound, perhaps, the very signature of your survival, that has betrayed you. The Dinophilis has been stalking you for 10 minutes, using the tall grass and acacia shrubs as cover, its padded feet making no sound. It is a master of the ambush. You are strong, but your senses are focused on the food before you, not the predator behind you. The attack is a sudden explosion of weight and power. The cat's muscular forelimbs wrap around your torso, pinning your arms to your sides before you can even react. There is no protracted struggle, no chase. Its method is too quick for that. You are locked in its grip as it positions its jaws with terrifying precision. It ignores your thrashing body, your powerful but useless arms. It knows exactly where the target is. It bites down on the back of your head. The 2 short, thick canines act like a vice, punching through the bone of your cranium with a focused burst of jaw pressure. The lights go out instantly. This incredibly specific, fatal moment was frozen in time, preserved in a fossil skull designated KNMER 1471. When paleontologists found it, they saw two distinct puncture holes on the back of the cranium. They became forensic detectives, working backwards from the wound to find the weapon. They measured the diameter of the holes and the distance between them. Then they scoured the fossil record for predators that lived in the same place at the same time. The giant crocodiles and hyenas didn't match, but when they compared the wounds to the canine teeth of Dinophalis, the match was perfect. The spacing, the size, the shape, it was the cat's signature, clear as day. This fossil provided a rare, perfect snapshot of a prehistoric kill. And it raises a fascinating question, one that anthropologists still argue about. The primary diet of P. boisei. Did their specialization, their reliance on hard-to-crack foods, make them predictable? Did the sound of their powerful jaws at work become a dinner bell for a predator that had, in turn, specialized in hunting them? Your strength, it seems, had become your greatest vulnerability. Let us leap forward across the chasm of time to a world that is colder, harsher, and closer to our own. You are in Ice Age Europe, a mere 50,000 years ago. Vast sheets of ice groan and grind 1,000 miles to the north, and the wind that sweeps across the mammoth steppe is sharp enough to steal the breath from your lungs. You are no longer an early experiment in the human story. You are one of its great successes. You are a Neanderthal. Forget the stooped, brutish caricatures of old. You are intelligent, immensely powerful, and a master of this frozen domain. Your mind conceives of complex tools from flint and bone, the Mysterian tradition of your people. Your powerfully built body is a furnace, perfectly adapted to the cold. In your hunting party, you are the apex predator, working in concert to bring down woolly rhinos, giant deer, and even the colossal mammoths that thunder across the plains. You fear little, but there is another giant in this land, a creature that does not fear you either. It is your great rival, not for food, but for the one resource more precious than any other in this frozen world. Shelter. It is the cave bear, Ursus spelaeus. This is no ordinary bear. Standing on its hind legs, it could reach over 10 feet into the air, and it weighed well over 1,000 pounds. It was a behemoth of muscle and fur and claw. Curiously, isotopic analysis of its bones tells us that despite its terrifying size, the cave bear was primarily herbivorous. This fact, however, is of little comfort, as it makes the creature's aggression all the more predictable. It wasn't hunting you for food, it was defending its home, and it would do so with a territorial fury that no predator could match. Many of the deep, dry caves that would be a perfect sanctuary for your family through the brutal winter have been used by these giants for millennia, a fact made clear by the tens of thousands of their bones found piled deep within European cave systems. The first snows have fallen, and your group needs to find a secure shelter for the coming winter. You find a promising cave mouth, a dark slash in a limestone cliff. Torches are lit, their resinous pine smoke filling the cold air as you venture inside. The passage slopes down into the deep, silent earth. You see the signs immediately. Massive, 5-clawed scrape marks gouged deep into the rock walls, and a polished sheen on the stone where a massive, furry body has squeezed past for centuries. You press on, your flint-tipped spear held tight in your grip. The main chamber opens up before you, vast and vaulted. In the far corner, there is a shallow depression in the dusty floor, a huge nest-like hollow, and in it, a mountain of dark fur is stirring. You have made a catastrophic mistake. The bear is not yet in deep hibernation. Your light and your scent have roused it. The sound begins as a low, guttural growl, that vibrates through the soles of your feet, and then it erupts into a full-throated roar that is pure, deafening rage. The beast rises, a dark monolith against the flickering torchlight, its shadow dancing like a demon on the cave walls. It is a being of pure, explosive power. Someone bravely thrusts a spear, but the flint point glances off the thick hide and matted fur. The bear swipes, a casual, contemptuous blow with a paw the size of a small boulder. The hunter it connects with is thrown across the cave, his skull collapsing from the sheer concussive force. The chamber descends into chaos. It is a desperate fight in a confined space against a creature of unimaginable strength. A battle you are destined to lose. The aftermath of such encounters is written across the bones of your people. The Neanderthal fossil record is rife with evidence of severe traumatic injuries. Skulls with depression fractures, ribs shattered by blunt force, limbs broken and twisted. While it's impossible to assign every injury to a specific cause, this pattern of damage is highly consistent with close-quarters combat against the giant megafauna of their world. Your death, and the deaths of many of your kind, raises a question that historians still argue whether Neanderthals actively hunted cave bears, perhaps for their valuable pelts and the prestige of such a kill, or if these gruesome scenes were simply the tragic, unavoidable consequence of two species desperately competing for the same vital shelter in a world where a cold, dry place to sleep meant the difference between life and death. Your Neanderthal cousins were masters of the frozen continents, but another human lineage was rising in the warmth of Africa. This line was yours. You are now an anatomically modern human, Homo sapiens, living on the southern coast of Africa some 100,000 years ago. The world of ice and mammoths feels a universe away. Your world is one of sun, turquoise water, and unimaginable bounty. The air is thick with the clean, sharp smell of salt spray. The tides are a reliable clock, twice a day revealing a feast in the rock pools and estuaries. You are leaner than a Neanderthal, built not for explosive power, but for endurance. Your mind is exploding with a new capacity for symbolic thought. You string together seashell beads, you grind red ochre into paint. You are developing a complex new relationship with the world around you. This rich coastal environment is the engine of your evolution. The fatty acids from fish and shellfish are fuel for your growing brain. You have learned to read the land, but now you are learning to read the water, and you feel like the master of this new domain. But the ocean is an alien world. It is ancient and indifferent, and its rules are not your rules. When you step into the surf, you are no longer the apex predator. You are an awkward, slow-moving trespasser in a world that belongs to something else. Lurking just beyond the crashing waves, in the deeper, cooler water, is a creature that has been perfecting the art of the ambush since before the dinosaurs. It is the ancestor of the great white shark. It is a ghost of gray muscle, a torpedo of sensory perfection, propelled by a tail that can launch it through the water with terrifying speed. It does not see you as a human, a being of complex thoughts and symbolic art. It sees a silhouette, a shape that kicks and splashes, a profile that looks remarkably like the fat, calorie-rich seals that it hunts in these same waters. The water is cool and pleasant around your waist. You are focused, your eyes scanning the submerged rocks for the dark shells of mussels, your hands skillfully wielding a sharpened stone to pry them loose. The rhythm of the waves is a familiar, lulling sound. You are in your element, successful and unafraid. This is your mistake. you never see the attack coming. There is no sound, no warning, just a sudden, incomprehensible surge of power from below and behind you. It feels less like a bite and more like a collision with a moving boulder. Jaws lined with rows of serrated triangular blades close around your leg with thousands of pounds of pressure. The initial bite is a devastating wound, but it is the signature headshake that follows which does the real damage, the serrated teeth acting like a saw, slicing through skin, muscle, and bone with horrific efficiency. You are pulled under, into the creature's world, a chaotic, thrashing blur of white water and blinding pain. Your body is never found, but the evidence of such attacks is preserved in the fossil record in a unique and chilling way. While a human victim of a shark attack is incredibly unlikely to fossilize, the science of trace fossils, the study of marks left behind by living things, allows us to reconstruct these events. Paleontologists have found the bones of other large mammals from this period, like seals and even rhinos that wandered too close to the water, that bear the unmistakable signature of a shark attack. A shark's tooth is a perfect tool for leaving a diagnosis. Unlike the puncture of a cat or the crushing bite of a hyena, a great shark's serrated teeth leave behind a series of parallel incisions. Fine, sharp grooves scraped deep into the surface of the bone. Scientists can analyze these marks under a microscope, measuring their depth and spacing to identify the size and species of the attacker. It is meticulous forensic work that proves, without a doubt, that your ancestors were on the menu. This constant, invisible threat from the water raises a fascinating question, and researchers are still piecing together just how much of the early human diet was marine-based. How did your ancestors balance the immense reward of this superfood from the sea against the terrifying and ever-present risk of a violent death from the deep? For the prize of a bigger brain and a thriving culture, it seems they were willing to pay a very high price. You have seen now, through the eyes of 6 of your ancestors and cousins, the fundamental terror that defined existence for millions of years. It was the terror of being eaten. You have felt the shadow of the eagle pass over you on the savannah, a winged death that haunted the childhood of the Australopithecus. You have experienced the explosive ambush of the giant crocodile and the opportunistic pounce of the great cat that ended the life of the tool-bearing Homo habilis. You have been run down on the plains of China by a pack of lion-sized hyenas, your lineage dragged back to their den of nightmares. You've felt the surgical precision of the terrible cat's bite, the crushing rage of a cornered cave bear, and the alien violence of the great shark rising from the depths. For eons, this was the central drama of your story. You were soft, slow, and armed with little more than clever hands and a desperate will to live in a world of biological weapons. You were prey. But this constant grinding pressure of predation was not just a story of endless death. It was the great engine of your creation. This was the evolutionary arms race that forged the human mind. Every rustle in the grass, every strange shadow, every unidentified sound was a life or death pop quiz. Those who answered correctly survived to pass on their genes. Those who failed were removed from the story. This relentless selective pressure favored not the strongest, fastest, or most toothy of your ancestors, but the cleverest. It favored the ones who could communicate a threat to their companions, the ones who could organize a defense, the ones who could imagine a new use for a sharpened stone. Your superpower wasn't claws or venom. It was cooperation. It was foresight. It was the dawning ability to look at the world and see not just what it is, but what it could be. The scientific evidence for this is compelling. If you map the timeline of human evolution, the most dramatic increase in brain size, a process called encephalization, happens during the Pleistocene epoch. This period, often nicknamed the Ice Age, was not one continuous deep freeze, but a chaotic series of advancing and retreating glaciers that repeatedly upended ecosystems. This environmental instability, combined with the constant threat from a bestiary of mega-predators, created the perfect crucible for forging a larger, more adaptable brain. The very monsters that hunted you were, in a way, your makers. Some scientists even propose a fearful ape hypothesis, suggesting that our modern anxieties, that feeling of being watched, the startle response, the fear of the dark, are a deep evolutionary hangover, a psychological echo of the millions of years we spent looking over our shoulders. Of course, the exact role of predation in driving human intelligence is a classic chicken and egg problem. Did we get smarter to avoid being eaten, or did getting smarter and learning to live in larger, more organized groups just turn us into a more appealing, high-calorie, and conveniently packaged food source for the predators, escalating the conflict? Historians still argue this point. But what is certain is that by the time your Homo sapiens ancestors began their final great migration across the planet, they had the tools, the social structures, and the cognitive ability to systematically dismantle the age of monsters. One by one, the great predators fell away, outcompeted or driven to extinction. You had won the war against the things with teeth and claws, but as the fear of the external enemy began to fade, you would come to face a new set of horrors. These were the invisible killers, the enemies that couldn't be fought with a spear or held at bay with a flickering fire. These were the monsters that attacked from within. To understand these new enemies, we must travel back in time once more, to the shores of a vast, ancient lake in Kenya, 1.5 million years ago. You are a boy, perhaps 9 or 10 years old, a member of the supremely successful Homo erectus species. You are tall for your age, with long, slender limbs that are a radical new adaptation for your kind. Your body is built for running, for ranging across the hot savanna for miles, for pursuing game and escaping danger. This body plan, so similar to our own, is a testament to your species' dominance. You are healthy, strong, and on the cusp of becoming a man. Your skeleton, when it is discovered by scientists 1.5 million years in your future, will be so complete that they will call you Turkana boy, and you will become a benchmark for understanding your entire species. But your near-perfect fossil will also preserve the story of your undoing, a story that begins not with the roar of a predator, but with a quiet, persistent, and agonizing throb in your jaw. It starts simply. One of your baby teeth has fallen out, but the adult molar pushing its way through has gone awry. It's growing in at a slight angle, pressing into its neighbor, creating a small, inflamed pocket in your gum. In your world, there is no dentistry, no antiseptic, no understanding of the invisible world of germs. A tiny wound that would be a minor inconvenience today is, for you, a potential death sentence. Food gets trapped in the pocket. Bacteria flourish. An infection takes hold. This is not a rare occurrence. The fossil record is littered with the skulls of your ancestors and cousins, their jaws pocked with the evidence of abscess, cavities, and periodontal disease. Dental pathology was one of the great, common killers of the prehistoric world. At first, the pain is a distraction. Soon, it becomes a constant, grinding torment that makes it difficult to chew and then to sleep. A knot of swelling appears on your jawline, hot and tender to the touch. Your family can see your suffering, but they are helpless. They can bring you softer foods, perhaps mash some marrow for you, but they have no medicine that can stop the war now raging inside your body. The infection deepens, eating into the bone of your mandible. The bacteria, having exhausted the resources of your jaw, now stage a full-scale invasion. They enter your bloodstream. This is septicemia, or blood poisoning. The true killer. Your body's defenses are overwhelmed. A raging fever takes hold, leaving you shivering uncontrollably one moment and burning up the next. You become weak, too weak to keep up with your family group as they make their daily foraging rounds. You are dizzy, delirious, your powerful runner's body now a leaden weight you can barely command. The world dissolves into a haze of pain and confusion. Your thirst is all-consuming, a fire in your throat from the fever. You stumble towards what you perceive as a source of relief, the cool, marshy edge of a swamp. The scientific evidence, preserved in your jawbone, clearly shows the small hole, the lesion, where the abscess festered and drained, a silent testament to the infection that killed you. From this starting point, paleopathologists can reconstruct your final tragic moments with a high degree of certainty, though they still argue about the specifics of the end. Did the septicemia finally stop your heart as you lay near the water's edge, your body then slumping into the mud? Or was it the final, cruel indignity of drowning? In your weakened, delirious state, you likely collapsed face first into the shallow, murky water. You would have lacked the strength, the consciousness, the simple motor control to lift your head and take a breath. It was a quiet, lonely, and undignified end for a boy who belonged to a lineage of conquerors. Your death is a stark reminder that before we could defeat the monsters of the world, we had to find a way to defeat the far more numerous and insidious monsters that live inside us. Not all internal enemies are invaders like bacteria. Some are poisons we willingly invite inside, hidden within the very sustenance we need to survive. Your story continues as Homo erectus, but you are now an adult female living 1.7 million years ago. Your group is skilled and successful. You are masters of your environment, and today you have proven it. After a long and dangerous hunt, you have brought down a large predator, perhaps a saber-toothed cat or an ancient species of lion. It is a great victory, a moment of feasting and relief. Your people may have already tamed the mystery of fire, and the scent of cooked meat now fills the air. A revolutionary development that is unlocking more nutrients and fueling the growth of your brain. In any successful kill, the most prized parts are the organs, rich in the fats and vitamins you need to thrive. The liver, dark and dense, is considered the greatest prize of all. You eat your fill, sharing in the communal triumph. The meat tastes rich and nourishing, but within it lies a hidden danger, a chemical time bomb. Unlike the livers of herbivores, the liver of a top carnivore is a biological storage unit for vitamin A. Over its lifetime, the predator has accumulated the vitamin from every animal it has ever eaten, concentrating it in its liver to levels that are catastrophically toxic to a hominin like you. You have just consumed a dose that is hundreds, perhaps thousands of times the safe limit. You have poisoned yourself, and your death will be a slow, bewildering, and agonizing affair. The first signs are innocuous. Headaches, a persistent feeling of nausea and fatigue. You might be dismissed by your group as merely unwell, but then your skin begins to change. It becomes dry, itchy, and begins to slough off in painful paper-like sheets. Your hair thins and falls out in clumps. Sores appear at the corners of your mouth. You are visibly wasting away, but the most horrific symptom is the one nobody else can see. It is a deep, relentless, and excruciating pain in your bones. It feels as if your own skeleton is on fire, an internal agony that never ceases. This is the hallmark of chronic hypervitaminosis A. The massive overdose of the vitamin is causing spontaneous, massive bleeding beneath the periosteum, the thin membrane that covers your bones. Your skeleton is, quite literally, bleeding from the inside out. Every movement becomes a source of torment. Walking is a trial. Keeping up with your nomadic group becomes impossible. Your fossilized remains, designated KNM-ER1808, tell this story with horrifying clarity. When scientists first examined your bones, they were baffled. On the surface of your long limb bones, there was a strange, thick, and disordered layer of extra bone tissue, almost like a grotesque, cancerous growth. It was not the result of an infection or a break. It was a classic pathological signature, the desperate attempt by your body to heal and contain the massive internal bleeding along the bones. Your skeleton had recorded a diary of your suffering. This diagnosis has been tragically confirmed in modern times. There are well-documented cases of Arctic explorers who, starving and desperate, consumed the livers of their sled dogs or of a polar bear, another apex predator, and suffered the exact same fate, right down to the skin peeling from their bodies. They provided a grim, modern analogue for your ancient death. While carnivore liver is the prime suspect in your case, scholars acknowledge the remote possibility that you could have achieved this level of toxicity through other means, perhaps by consuming an enormous quantity of bee larvae or another unusually rich source of the vitamin. But the evidence points overwhelmingly to the triumphant feast that became a death sentence. Your story is a chilling lesson in the fine line our ancestors had to walk. In a world with no nutritional labels, every meal was a gamble, and the very thing that promised survival could just as easily deliver a slow, agonizing death. Sometimes, the invisible killer is not an acute infection or a hidden poison that delivers a swift, albeit agonizing, death. Sometimes his SARS. The killer is time itself, and the slow, grinding accumulation of pain that can transform a life into a decades-long ordeal. To understand this, we must travel to the Shanidar Cave, nestled high in the Zagros Mountains of modern-day Iraq. This cave, a crucial site containing the remains of 10 of your Neanderthal kin, has done more to shape our understanding of their lives than almost any other place on Earth. You are one of them. You are our Shanidar one, and your story is not about the moment of your death, but about the astonishing fact that you lived so long. You are an old man, perhaps in your 40s, and your skeleton is a roadmap of a life of brutal hardship and incredible resilience. Let us examine your body as a forensic anthropologist would. We start with your skull. At some point in your youth, you suffered a catastrophic, crushing blow to the left side of your face. The fracture is severe, warping the bone around your eye socket. You would have been knocked unconscious, bleeding profusely, and left for dead. But you survived. The bone is healed, but the damage suggests you were very likely left blind in your left eye. Your world was now perpetually flat, your depth perception gone, a crippling disadvantage for a hunter who needs to throw a spear with accuracy. Next, we look at your right arm. It is a shocking sight. The humerus, The upper arm bone is withered and snapped short just above where the elbow would have been. The lower arm is gone entirely. This injury, likely from the same event that crushed your skull, was just as devastating. Perhaps your arm was pinned in a rock fall, mangled beyond repair. Perhaps it was amputated by your kin in a desperate primitive surgery to stop the spread of gangrene, or perhaps it simply atrophied and fell away. Whatever the cause, you lived the rest of your life as a one-eyed, one-armed man. This healed amputation is one of the earliest examples of such a grievous injury being survived in the entire human fossil record. Imagine trying to nap a flint tool, butcher a kill, or defend yourself from a cave bear with only one arm. But your litany of pain continues. We move to your legs. There are healed fractures in the bones of your right foot, and your knee and ankle joints are riddled with severe degenerative arthritis. Every single step you took for the last years of your life would have been a jolt of grinding, searing pain. You would not have walked. You would have hobbled, a slow, conspicuous, and vulnerable figure in a world that had no pity for the weak. And yet, you lived. The scientific evidence is undeniable. The massive bone regrowth around your injuries shows that you did not die from this trauma. You healed, and you carried on for years, possibly decades. You lived long enough for your teeth to become worn down to the roots from a lifetime of use. You lived into old age. Your very existence is one of the most profound and challenging puzzles in human evolution. How? How does a man so catastrophically disabled survive the brutal realities of the Ice Age? Your fossil sparks a profound debate that continues to this day. Does your survival prove the existence of Neanderthal compassion? Did your family, your clan, care for you, protect you, feed you when you could not hunt, and guide you when you could not see clearly? Is your broken body the first testament to a shared humanity, an empathy that transcends the brutal calculus of survival? Or, as some scholars still argue, was your survival a testament only to your own unbelievable toughness? Were you a burden, a hanger-on who scraped by on the periphery, too stubborn and strong to die? Your bones don't give us the final answer, but they paint a portrait of a life defined by a level of constant, chronic pain that is hard for us, in our modern world, to even comprehend. Your slow, internal battle with your own broken body was a quiet form of suffering more profound than any quick, violent death. The spectacular trauma of Shanidar 1 tells a story of survival against all odds, but not all suffering is born from a single, violent event. Some of the cruelest fates are written slowly, day by day, by the quiet, internal decay of the body itself. To witness this, we travel to a cold, damp rock shelter in what will one day be the countryside of France, around 50,000 years ago. You are the old man of La Chapelle, a Neanderthal approaching the end of a long, hard life. Your enemy is not a beast or a rival. It is your own skeleton. You are riddled with a case of osteoarthritis so severe it has reshaped your entire body. Your day begins not with the rising sun, but with the familiar sickening grind of bone on bone. You are lying on a bed of hides and dry grass, but a deep, penetrating cold has settled in your joints overnight, turning them from sources of movement into sources of pure, unadulterated pain. To stand up is a monumental effort, a 10-minute negotiation with your own anatomy. Your lower spine feels like a column of fused grinding rock. Your hip socket is a mess of inflamed tissue and degraded cartilage. Every degree of movement is a fresh wave of agony. You push yourself up with a groan, your body bent into a permanent shuffling stoop. When your skeleton was discovered in 1908, it became a celebrity, but for all the wrong reasons. The famous paleontologist Marcellin Boule, tasked with reconstructing you, saw your stooped posture, your heavy brow ridge, and your large joints, and he made a fateful mistake. He interpreted your pathology as your species' normal anatomy. His reconstruction gave the world the classic image of the Neanderthal, a shuffling, brutish, semi-erect ape-man. This single, flawed interpretation became the stereotype that would define your people for a century. In reality, you were simply an old man suffering from a terrible disease. Your day is a study in quiet misery. You watch the younger, healthier members of your group prepare for the hunt, their movements fluid and powerful. You, on the other hand, are largely immobile. Even the simple act of chewing is impossible. The scientific evidence from your skull is clear. You had lost nearly all of your teeth long before you died. The bone of your jaw had healed over the empty sockets, a process that takes years. This simple fact provides another astonishing clue into your life and the nature of your society. With no teeth to chew the tough, uncooked meat and fibrous plants that made up your diet, you would have starved. The fact that you didn't means that for years, someone else was doing it for you, likely chewing your food into a soft pulp before giving it to you, an act of profound and patient care. But as your final winter closes in, that care is no longer enough. The cold is a constant torment, aggravating your arthritis to an unbearable degree. You can barely move from your place by the fire. Your immobility has made you a complete liability. You cannot help, you cannot flee, you cannot fend for yourself. Your life has narrowed to this single point of pain. Your death, when it comes, is quiet and slow. It is a fading away, a succumbing to the cold that your body can no longer fight, a starvation that sets in as your group struggles to support you through a harsh season. The arthritis was not the direct cause of your death, but it was the author of your final chapter. Your very existence forces a re-evaluation of your people. Historians once viewed this individual as proof of Neanderthal primitivism, the ultimate brutish caveman. But now, armed with a modern understanding of your pathologies, scholars argue your survival into old age is actually proof of their advanced social structure and empathy. The fact that a creature so hobbled and helpless could live for so long is perhaps the strongest evidence we have that your people were not savage beasts, but a community of beings who understood the profound and deeply human commitment of caring for their own. The agony of a broken body or a chronic disease is a long, slow battle. But there is another form of internal suffering, a biological crisis so common and so dangerous that for millennia it was one of the leading causes of death for half of the adult population. Yet, it is one of the hardest to see in the fossil record. It is the primal, perilous ordeal of childbirth. This danger is written into the very blueprint of our species, the result of a cruel evolutionary compromise known as the Obstetrical Dilemma. On one hand, our commitment to walking upright on two legs required a narrow, stable, and relatively rigid pelvis. On the other, our ever-growing intelligence demanded an ever-growing brain, housed in an ever-growing skull. A large head needing to pass through a small opening, it is a fundamental architectural conflict, a perfect storm that turned the miracle of birth into a life-threatening emergency. To understand this, you are no longer an old man in a cold cave. You are a young woman, a Homo heidelbergensis, living in Europe 400,000 years ago. You are strong, healthy, and you are about to bring a new life into your group. The first pains are a familiar signal. The other women of your clan gather around you in your shelter, their faces a mixture of encouragement and deep ancestral concern. They have seen this play out many times before. They have seen the joy of a successful birth, and they have seen the tragedy of a failed one. Compared to other primates, who often give birth quickly and alone with relative ease, a human birth is a social event out of sheer necessity. It is a group effort fraught with risk. At first, everything seems normal. But as the hours turn into a day, and the day bleeds into a night of excruciating, fruitless labor, a quiet panic begins to settle over the group. Something is wrong. The baby is not descending. Perhaps it is in a breech position, coming out feet first in a tangled, impossible presentation. Or perhaps the evolutionary gamble has failed this time, and your baby's head is simply too large for your pelvic opening. Your companions are helpless. They have no surgical knowledge, no tools to intervene. They can offer you water, they can hold your hand and speak soothing words, but they are merely witnesses to a biological crisis they cannot solve. Your strength wanes. The hours of exertion lead to exhaustion, dehydration, and internal bleeding. Your ordeal ends in a tragic silence, a double death that was tragically common. Direct fossil evidence for this is, by its nature, incredibly rare. The delicate bones of a fetus or newborn are seldom preserved. But a few remarkable discoveries give us a haunting glimpse into these tragedies. In Italy, archaeologists found the 10,000-year-old remains of a young woman with the tiny skeleton of a fetus positioned between her legs, a clear case of a mother and child who died during a complicated delivery. By studying the pelvic dimensions of fossilized hominins, like the famous Lucy, paleoanthropologists fiercely debate the exact pelvic dimensions and birth mechanics of our ancestors, trying to pinpoint the moment in our history when childbirth became so dangerous. The solution our bodies evolved for this dilemma is, in itself, a testament to the danger. Human babies are born shockingly premature. A chimpanzee is born with its brain already at 50% of its adult size. A human baby is born with its brain at a mere 25%. Our brains do most of their growing outside the womb, tripling in size during the first fragile year of life. We are born neurologically unfinished, with soft spots in our skulls that allow the plates to shift and squeeze during the journey through the birth canal. We are born earlier and more helpless than any other primate for one simple reason. If we waited any longer, our heads would be too big to get out at all. Every single person who has ever lived is the result of this terrifying biological balancing act. For every successful birth, a story of survival, there is a ghost. The untold number of your ancestral mothers who were simply on the wrong side of that equation. We have seen how our ancestors were stalked by invisible killers from within: infection, poison, disease, and the biological crisis of birth. These stories are a testament to the fragility of life. But our final journey in this chapter is different. It is the story of a condition that should have been a swift and certain death sentence, but somehow wasn't. It is a story whose conclusion is not about pathology, but about the first flickers of a revolutionary new survival strategy: compassion. For this, we must journey to the foothills of the Caucasus Mountains, to a place called Dmanisi in the modern-day nation of Georgia. Here, 1.8 million years ago, your kind made one of its first pioneering journeys out of Africa. The fossils found here are remarkable, showing a surprising variety of features that challenge the simple idea that only one species first made that trek. You are one of these ancient pioneers, a member of a group sometimes called Homo georgicus. You are old, and you are starving in a world of plenty. Your problem is simple and absolute. You have no teeth, not a single one. Look around you. The world of the Pleistocene is tough and abrasive. The primary sources of food are fibrous, uncooked tubers that need to be ground down. Animal carcasses with thick hides and tough, sinewy meat, and bones that need to be cracked for their marrow. For you, all of this is inedible. You can gnaw uselessly on a piece of meat, but you cannot tear it. You can hold a root in your hand, but you cannot process it. You are condemned to a slow, agonizing death by starvation, surrounded by food you cannot eat. Your existence is a constant gnawing hunger, a slow fading of the world as your body consumes itself. This would have been the end of your story, were it not for the astonishing evidence preserved in your skull. When scientists found your remains, they noted your complete toothlessness, but they saw something else, something far more profound. The alveolar bone, the part of the jaw that holds the tooth sockets, was not broken or freshly damaged. It was completely healed, smoothed over, and reabsorbed into the jaw. Bone resorption is a slow process. It takes years. This was the irrefutable scientific proof that you did not just lose your teeth and die. You lived for a long, long time, years perhaps, in this utterly helpless state. How is this possible? There is only one logical, powerful, and deeply moving conclusion. Someone was keeping you alive. Your family, your clan, your small social group. They did not abandon you as a useless burden. They actively cared for you. Imagine them, armed with nothing more than primitive, Oldowan-style stone choppers, far simpler than the elegant hand axes to come. They would have cracked open the bones of a kill and scooped out the soft, nutrient-rich marrow specifically for you. They would have scraped the brain matter from a skull and brought it to you. They may have even gathered soft berries and insects, or perhaps even pre-chewed tougher foods to make a pulp you could swallow. This is not just tolerance. This is active, long-term, empathetic care. It is evidence of a social bond so strong that the group was willing to invest precious resources in a member who could offer nothing tangible in return. Your death, when it finally came, was likely not violent or tragic, but a gentle fading away from old age, a peaceful end made possible by the kindness of others. Your fossilized skull is a cornerstone in the argument for the deep antiquity of human compassion. Of course, some skeptical scholars still argue it could be explained by self-sufficiency, suggesting that perhaps you could have found enough brains, marrow, and other soft foods on your own to survive. But for many, your survival is the first powerful evidence of a uniquely human trait emerging from the brutal calculus of the prehistoric world. It is a beautiful story, but this emerging cognitive complexity, the ability to see another being not as a competitor, but as someone to be cared for, has a dark and terrible shadow. A mind that can conceive of empathy is also a mind that can conceive of cruelty. And as we turn the page to the next chapter of our story, we will find that the most dangerous monster our ancestors would ever face was, in the end, themselves. A mind that can feel empathy can also feel its opposite. The capacity for care is intertwined with the capacity for cruelty. For the next chapter of our journey, we turn from the indifferent dangers of the natural world to a new and far more intimate kind of horror, the violence that humans inflict upon one another. To find the first definitive proof of this, the oldest cold case in human history, we must travel to a deep, dark cave system in the Atapuerca Mountains of northern Spain. The time is 430,000 years ago. You are a Homo heidelbergensis, a tall, robust ancestor to the Neanderthals. Your world is one of complex social groups, sophisticated stone tools, and cooperative big-game hunting. And it is also a world of murder. We are deep underground now, far from the light of the sun. The air is still, cold, and heavy with the smell of damp limestone. Our journey takes us through winding passages to the edge of a black abyss, a vertical shaft that plunges 43 feet down into the earth. This is the Cima de los Huesos, the pit of bones. At the bottom of this shaft, paleontologists have found one of the most astonishing collections of human fossils in the world, a tangled, commingled mass of at least 28 of your kin, representing more than 80% of all known human fossils from this entire period of history. How did they all get here? Did they fall by accident? Was this a mass grave after a catastrophe? Or was this a sacred place? A primitive tomb where bodies were intentionally laid to rest? The mystery of the pit is deep. But your skull, designated Cranium 17, provides the most sinister clue. You are not dying from a disease or a predator attack. You are facing another member of your own species. The confrontation is tense, personal, and face-to-face. The other individual is right-handed, and they are holding a heavy, sharp stone tool. There is a shout, a moment of blinding pain, and a powerful blow lands squarely on your forehead, just above your left eye. The force of the impact fractures your skull. You stumble, but before you can fall or recover, a second blow is delivered with deliberate, focused violence, landing in almost the exact same spot as the first. This one is final. Your skull tells this story with chilling precision. For decades, the damage was noted, but not fully understood. But with the advent of modern forensic technology, a team of scientists put your cranium through a high-resolution CT scanner, analyzing the wounds like a modern homicide detective. The scientific evidence was conclusive. They found two almost identical fractures. By analyzing the trajectory and the pattern of the breaks, they determined that both blows were delivered with the same object from the same angle. This was not a fall. A tumble down the shaft would have created a complex pattern of random fractures, not two identical wounds on the front of the skull. This was not a predator. No carnivore in Ice Age Spain had teeth that could produce such a wound. This was the work of another hominin, a repeated, intentional act of lethal violence. The analysis also showed a complete lack of any healing, no bone regrowth whatsoever, proving the injuries were inflicted at or near the time of your death. After you were killed, your body was carried through the dark passages to the edge of the pit and dropped into the darkness to join the others. Why? This is where the mystery deepens. Amidst the thousands of hominin bones, only one single artifact was ever found. A beautiful, flawlessly crafted hand axe made of a striking red quartzite, a type of stone not found anywhere near the cave. Nicknamed Excalibur, its presence is a profound enigma. Was it the murder weapon, discarded with the victim? Or was it the world's first known ritual offering, a symbolic gift for the dead? This single murder transforms the entire site. Paleoanthropologists are locked in a deep debate about the nature of the Cima pit itself. Was it a sacred burial ground that was desecrated by a murder victim being thrown in among the honored dead? Or was the whole pit a dumping ground for the victims of a brutal conflict, a social purge, or some other act of group violence? Your death, the oldest murder we have ever discovered, proves that the darkness in that cave was not just a physical absence of light. It was the shadow of a new kind of monster, one that wore a human face. The deliberate murder of one individual by another is a chilling landmark in the history of human behavior. But as we travel deeper into the caves of Atapuerca, we find that this is not the darkest secret they hold. We leave the Cima de los Huesos and move to a different site in the same hills, a vast chamber called Gran Dolina, and we step further back in time to a period roughly 800,000 years ago. The people here are different. You are Homo antecessor, the pioneer man. Your species, one of the earliest known to have reached Western Europe, is a candidate for the common ancestor of both Neanderthals and modern humans. You are a successful hunter and tool maker, living in a world that is, for the moment, free of ice. But you are also a cannibal, and you are not just a cannibal. You are a connoisseur. The evidence for your fate is found in a layer of the cave floor designated TD6. To an archaeologist, it at first looks like a typical prehistoric living surface. It is littered with primitive stone tools and the fossilized, discarded bones of meals eaten long ago. There are the remains of horses, deer, rhinos, and other game animals, but mixed in among them, treated in exactly the same way, are the bones of other hominins. There are at least 11 of your people here, and most of them are children and adolescents. Your remains are not a respectful burial. You are garbage. You are leftovers from a feast. The scientific evidence is so clear, so overwhelming, that it leaves no room for doubt. It is a forensic nightmare. Your bones bear the unmistakable signature of systematic, methodical butchery. Fine, linear cut marks from flint tools are carved across your ribs and limb bones, exactly where muscles would have been stripped away. Your joints have been disarticulated with the same efficiency used on a deer. Your long bones have been smashed open with hammer stones, leaving classic percussion marks to get at the nutritious marrow inside. Even your skull has been peeled of its flesh and broken open at the base, the most direct route to accessing the calorie-rich brain. The most damning evidence of all is the simple context. Your butchered bones are scattered and intermingled with the butchered bones of the game animals. To the inhabitants of this cave, you were just another animal. You were meat. Let us reconstruct the event. This was not a case of a starving group consuming its own dead to survive. The sheer number of butchered animals in the same layer proves there was no shortage of food. This was an act of aggression. Your small family group was likely attacked by a rival clan. It was a raid, swift, brutal, and successful. The attackers killed you and the other members of your group, and they did not leave your bodies to rot. They brought you back to their home base, to this cave, as spoils of war. Here you were processed. There was no ritual, no ceremony. It was a factory-like dismemberment. The choicest cuts of muscle were removed. The bones were cracked for their marrow. Some of your bones even show evidence of being gnawed on by other humans after the main butchering was complete, suggesting your killers ate their fill and then casually tossed your remains into the corner with the other scraps, just as you might toss away a chicken bone today. This discovery has pushed back the timeline for this kind of behavior by hundreds of thousands of years. The primary debate surrounding the Gran Dolina cannibals is not if, but why. What could motivate such a complete dehumanization of one's own kind? Was this purely gastronomic cannibalism? In a world where every calorie counted, were other humans simply seen as a convenient, two-legged protein source, no different from a horse? Or was this something more sinister, a form of territorial cannibalism? Was the act of hunting, killing, and consuming your rivals a brutally effective way to eliminate competition and send a terrifying message to any other groups who dared to encroach on their resources? The fact that so many of the victims were the children suggests an element of pragmatism. They were easier prey. But it also speaks to a chilling strategy: to wipe out the next generation of your enemies. Whatever the reason, your fate proves that long before the murder at the Pit of Bones, your ancestors had already learned to look at each other and see not a relative, but a resource. The chilling, systematic cannibalism practiced by your ancient ancestors at Grandolina was not an isolated aberration, lost to the deep past. The practice was a dark thread woven through the tapestry of the human story, and it was picked up by our closest and often most romanticized relatives. To witness this, we leap forward hundreds of thousands of years to a cave in Goyet, Belgium. The time is roughly 40,000 years ago. The world is in the grip of the Ice Age, and it is the domain of the Neanderthals, a highly successful species that had dominated the landscapes of Europe and Asia for over 300,000 years, far longer than we Homo sapiens have even existed. You are one of them, a member of a small family group seeking shelter in this vast and unforgiving world. And you are being hunted, not by a cave bear or a lion, but by your own kind. Inside the Goyet cave system, archaeologists have uncovered a vast collection of animal bones, the remains of successful hunts for Ice Age horses and reindeer. But alongside these remains, they found something else: the bones of 6 Neanderthals. There was an infant, a child, and 4 adults or adolescents. Just as at Grandolina, these were not burials. These were the leftovers from a meal. The evidence is brutally familiar, a direct echo of the earlier horrors at Atapuerca. The Neanderthal bones are covered in the same telltale marks of butchery as the animal bones. There are fine cut marks where flesh was filleted away, percussion marks where bones were smashed for marrow, and scrape marks where the bones were cleaned of every last scrap of tissue. But the cannibals of Goyet added a new, even more profound layer of desecration. After the bodies were stripped of their flesh and their bones emptied of marrow, the remains were not simply discarded. They were repurposed. Your femur and tibias, the largest, strongest bones in your body, were selected and used as tools. Specifically, they became retouchers, or pressure flakers, hard implements used to strike the edges of flint tools to sharpen them. Imagine the scene. A Neanderthal, having feasted on the flesh of a rival, now sits by the fire, casually picking up the thigh bone of his victim to sharpen the stone knife he will use on his next kill. It is an act of such complete and utter objectification that it defies our modern attempts to see Neanderthals as peaceful, gentle beings. You were not just food, you were raw material. Genetic analysis of your remains adds another layer to this grim story. It revealed that your group was genetically distinct from Neanderthals, who had lived in that same region in earlier times, and more closely related to groups from Germany and Spain. This suggests a prehistoric landscape that was far from static, a world of migrating populations, of conflict and displacement, where one group could supplant another through brutal violence. Your death was likely the final act in a territorial dispute, a complete and total annihilation of your family line. The evidence from this cave, and others like it, has fueled an intense scholarly discussion. The ongoing debate is whether Neanderthal cannibalism was a common, widespread practice or a rare behavior resorted to only in the most desperate of circumstances. For a long time, any evidence was dismissed as a one-off event, an anomaly. But as more sites are uncovered, from El Cidrón in Spain to Meaux-la-Guercy in France, all showing the same grim signatures of butchery and consumption, the picture is changing. It is becoming increasingly likely that for at least some Neanderthal groups, cannibalism was not an act of desperation. It was a strategy. It was a culturally transmitted behavior, a normal part of their violent and dangerous world. It proves that the capacity for cruelty, for treating another thinking, feeling being as nothing more than an object, is not a uniquely modern human flaw. It is an ancient part of our shared and often dark inheritance. We have seen the brutal finality of prehistoric violence, where individuals were not just killed, but consumed and objectified. But the fossil record does not only preserve tales of the dead. Sometimes it tells the even more remarkable stories of those who were meant to die, but survived. These are the stories of walking ghosts, individuals who carried the scars of a failed murder for the rest of their lives. For this story, we travel to a rock shelter in Saint-Césaire, France. The time is 36,000 years ago. The world is in a state of unprecedented change. You are a Neanderthal, but you are among the last of your kind. A new type of human, the lanky and creative Homo sapiens, has recently arrived in Europe, and your two worlds are beginning to collide. Your people are adapting, creating a new kind of toolkit called the Chapelle-aux-Saints, a blend of old Neanderthal traditions and new ideas, perhaps inspired by the newcomers. It is a time of flux, of tension, and of violence. Your story is not about your death. It is about an event that happened many months, or perhaps even years, before you died. It was a moment of sudden, shocking violence. You are in a confrontation, face to face with your attacker. They are armed with a piece of flint, its edge napped to a razor-sharp finish. They swing it down in a powerful arc, aiming for the top of your head. The blow is true and viciously sharp, not a crushing impact, but a deep, cleaving slice. It cuts through your scalp and bites deep into the bone of your skull, a wound that was almost certainly intended to be lethal. You collapse, bleeding profusely, and are left for dead. But you do not die. The evidence is written indelibly on your skull. When it was found, scientists immediately noticed a long, dramatic gash running across the top of your cranium. But this was no ordinary wound. Under close examination, using the modern techniques of paleotraumatology, they saw that the sharp, V-shaped edges of the cut were not fresh. They were rounded, smoothed over, and covered with the telltale calloused texture of significant bone regrowth. This is the irrefutable scientific proof of healing. You survived this attack, and you survived it for a long time. The wound is a perfect match for the kind of injury a flint blade would make, proving its human origin. This was no fall, no animal attack. This was a deliberate attempt on your life, and you lived to tell the tale. Imagine the aftermath, the searing pain, the risk of infection, the slow and arduous process of recovery. Your kin would have had to nurse you back to health, cleaning the wound, bringing you food and water until you were strong enough to fend for yourself again. For the rest of your life, you would have carried the physical legacy of this attack. A deep, prominent scar would have cleaved your scalp, a permanent and visible reminder of your brush with death. You may have suffered from chronic headaches, dizzy spells, or even seizures from the traumatic brain injury. Every day, when you looked at the members of your group, you may have seen the face of your attacker, or the faces of those who saved you. You were a living monument to violence and to survival. Your healed wound opens up one of the most tantalizing mysteries of this transitional period in European prehistory. The central question raised by your survival is, who was the attacker? Was it another Neanderthal? Perhaps it was the result of a heated dispute within your own group, a fight over food, status, or a mate that escalated to a bloody, but not quite fatal, conclusion. Or was it something more? Given the time and the unique cultural context, was this one of the first recorded instances of violent conflict between a Neanderthal and one of the newly arrived modern humans? We may never know for sure, but your scarred skull is a silent testament to the fact that you lived through a moment of murderous intent, and it proves that the violent world of the late Ice Age was not just a story of the killers and the killed, but also of the wounded. The healed wound of the Saint-Césaire Neanderthal left us with a tantalizing, unanswered question. Was the violence that scarred him an internal dispute, or was it the first hint of conflict between two different human species? To find a more definitive and far more lethal clue, we must return to the familiar shadows of Shanidar Cave in Iraq. We are not here to revisit the old, disabled man, Shanidar I. Our focus is on another of your kin, a different skeleton from a different layer of the cave floor. You are Shanidar III, a Neanderthal man in the prime of your life, between 40 and 50 years old. You are a hunter, strong and experienced. And you are about to become the victim of a revolutionary new technology. You are moving through the high grasslands of the Zagros foothills, perhaps tracking game or patrolling the borders of your territory. Your own hunting weapon is a heavy, fire-hardened spear, a powerful tool designed for close-quarters thrusting. To kill a great beast, you must get dangerously close to it, a style of hunting that has left its mark in the high number of traumatic injuries found on the skeletons of your people. But the attack on you does not come from up close. It comes from a distance. There is no warning roar, no challenge from a rival. There is only a sudden, piercing, white-hot pain in the left side of your chest. You look down and see the shaft of a light spear, a dart, protruding from your ribs. You have been shot. You do not die immediately. You are strong, and you manage to stagger back to the safety of your cave. But the damage is done. Your companions can do little but watch as your condition worsens over the next few weeks. The wound in your chest makes every breath a painful, shallow gasp. Your lung has likely been punctured and is slowly collapsing, filling with fluid. A fever sets in as infection takes root in your chest cavity. You die a slow, suffocating death, not from the initial wound, but from its inevitable, untreatable complications. For decades after your skeleton was found, the wound on your 9th left rib was noted as a curiosity, perhaps a simple hunting accident. But recent intensive analysis has transformed it into a piece of evidence as significant as any in the human story. Using CT scans and powerful microscopes, scientists analyzed the cut mark in the bone. It was a narrow, deep groove. They knew that a thrust from a heavy Neanderthal spear would have created a very different, wider wound. To test their theories, they engaged in a bit of experimental archaeology. They took pig carcasses, a good anatomical substitute for a muscular Neanderthal chest, and stabbed them with replica spears. The heavy thrusting spears couldn't replicate your injury. But when they threw lighter stone-tipped projectiles, the kind that early modern humans were known to have developed, they hit the jackpot. A low-mass, high-velocity projectile created the exact same type of wound. This has become a centerpiece in the debate over Neanderthal sapiens interaction. The weapon that killed you was almost certainly not a Neanderthal weapon. It was the product of a different, more advanced technological mind, the kind that belonged to our direct ancestors, Homo sapiens, who were known to be in the region at this time. Their lighter throwing spears and the eventual invention of the atlatl, or spear thrower, gave them a huge advantage, the ability to kill from a safe distance. Your death may be the first direct physical evidence of that advantage being turned not just on prey, but on other humans. Was it a territorial dispute that turned violent? A chance encounter between two hunting parties that ended in a fatal misunderstanding? Or was it something more organized, an early act in a long, low-intensity war that would eventually see your entire species vanish? We will never know the motive, but the forensic evidence from your rib points to a chilling conclusion. You may very well be the first known victim of a long-range homicide, a casualty of a technological gap, and a ghost from the First True World War. The thrown spear that killed Shanidar III was a dark premonition of the future of human conflict. With the Neanderthals gone, the world was now populated by only one human species, our own. But this unity did not bring peace. On the contrary, with no other species to fight, our ancestors turned their ever-improving technology for killing against the only suitable targets left: each other. The scale of this violence grew, escalating from individual murders to organized group-level conflict. To find the first chilling evidence of this, the world's oldest known cemetery of war, we must travel to the banks of the Nile River, at a site in Sudan called Jebel Sahaba. The time is 13,000 years ago. The Great Ice Age is ending, and the world is in flux. As the climate changes and populations grow, the fertile strip of land along the river has become a fiercely contested prize. In the 1960s, as the waters of the Nile were rising due to the construction of the Aswan High Dam, a team of archaeologists conducted a frantic rescue excavation of a large ancient cemetery before it was lost forever. They unearthed the remains of 59 of your people. But as they cleaned the bones, a horrifying picture began to emerge. This was no peaceful burial ground. This was a testament to a massacre. Of the 59 individuals, men, women, and children, nearly half of them showed unmistakable signs of having died a brutally violent death. They had been shot, stabbed, and bludgeoned. You are one of them. Your skeleton, along with 23 others, is a canvas of prehistoric warfare. The scientific evidence is as stark as it is tragic. Your bones are riddled with the weapons that killed you. Sharp, chiseled points of stone and vicious barbs are found embedded in your chest cavity, lodged in your spine, and even inside your skull. One man was found with 20 separate impact points from projectiles still stuck in his skeleton. Another had a flint point that had shattered his elbow, and another that had sliced through his hip. A young woman was found buried in a pit with her 2 children, all of whom bore the same marks of violence. This was not a battle between warriors. It was an indiscriminate slaughter. The forensic analysis reveals an even darker story. Many of the victims, yourself included, have fatal wounds, but you also bear the marks of healed injuries from previous attacks. A rib that was broken and mended, a skull that had a healed depression fracture. This was not a single, terrible event. This was a way of life. Your community was trapped in a state of endemic, recurring warfare, a cycle of violent raids that spanned generations. The varied styles of the projectile points found in the bodies adds another layer to this story, suggesting the attacks may have been carried out by different groups over time, or by a shifting coalition of enemies. For decades, this site was seen as a singular, brutal event, a snapshot of the First War. But this reanalysis of the skeletons has changed the story. The debate now is not over whether a war happened, but over the nature and duration of the conflict. Was this a short, intense conflict over resource, driven by the dramatic climate change at the end of the Ice Age that made the Nile Valley one of the only places to live? Or, as the healed wounds strongly suggest, was this evidence of a deeply ingrained culture of raiding and feuding that was a persistent feature of life for your people? Imagine your existence. You live in a beautiful, fertile land, but you can never be at ease. Every unfamiliar sound, every canoe spotted on the river could signal another raid. You carry the scars of past attacks on your body, and you know that the next one could be your last. Your death, when it comes, is in a shower of arrows, a sudden, brutal end to a life lived under the constant shadow of war. Jebel Sahaba is a grim monument, proof that organized violence is not a modern invention, but an ancient tragedy with roots stretching back to the very dawn of our own species. From the mass graves of Jebel Sahaba, we have seen the grim dawn of organized warfare. For the final chapter in this story of human cruelty, we leap forward in time to the high, frozen peaks of the Ötztal Alps on the border of modern Austria and Italy. The time is 5,300 years ago. Here we find the single most perfectly preserved victim of prehistoric violence ever discovered. His story is not one of a faceless casualty in a battle. It is an intensely personal and detailed cold case. A Copper Age true crime story written in a frozen body. You are this man, known to us as Utsi, the Iceman. You are not a primitive hunter-gatherer. You are a sophisticated man of the emerging Copper Age, roughly 45 years old, and you are kitted out with the most advanced technology of your time. Your axe is not stone, but a head of almost pure copper, a high-status object traded from hundreds of miles to the south. You wear a bearskin cap, leggings of deerskin, and a coat of woven grass. You carry a quiver with a mix of finished and unfinished arrows, a fire-starting kit, and even primitive mushrooms with antibiotic properties. You are an experienced mountaineer, a man of importance, and you are a man on the run. Your final 2 days are a story of conflict and flight. Down in the warm, green valley, you were involved in a violent fight. Your right hand bears a deep defensive wound, a cut to the bone between your thumb and forefinger that was just beginning to heal. You won that fight, or at least you escaped it, and fled upwards, climbing thousands of feet into the unforgiving alpine wilderness. High in a mountain pass, believing you are safe, you stop to rest. You eat a large, hearty meal, the dried meat of ibex and red deer, a side of einkorn wheat, ferns for garnish. You are refueling, preparing for the next leg of your journey. It is your last meal. Sometime within an hour or two of you finishing it, as you rest and digest, an assassin strikes. They approach from behind you and below, firing a single arrow from a distance of perhaps 100 feet. You don't see it coming. The flint arrowhead punches through your deerskin cloak and into your back, just below the left shoulder. The impact is a shocking, violent blow. The arrowhead severs your subclavian artery, one of the main blood vessels leading from the heart. It is an utterly lethal wound. You are bleeding out internally, and you are going to die within minutes. In your final moments, you reach back and pull the arrow's shaft from your back, but the stone head remains lodged deep inside you. Perhaps your killer approached and finished you with a blow to the head as you lay dying. Perhaps you simply collapsed from blood loss, hitting your head on a rock. You fall into a shallow gully, and as your life ebbs away, a freak storm moves in, burying your body in snow, which over time compresses into glacial ice, preserving you perfectly for the next 5 millennia. Your body, discovered by hikers in 1991, is a forensic treasure trove. X-rays clearly show the arrowhead still in your shoulder. DNA analysis of your gear found the blood of at least 4 other people on your knife and arrows. Analysis of the pollen in your digestive tract mapped your final journey up from the valley floor. The contents of your stomach pinpointed the time of your death to within an hour or 2. Scientists have studied your 61 tattoos, the parasites in your gut, your worn joints, and your genetic makeup. You are the most thoroughly studied ancient human in history, and every piece of evidence deepens the central mystery. The official cause of death is clear, but the central debate is not how you died, but why. This was no simple robbery. Your priceless copper axe was left with your body. This was an assassination, a targeted killing. The defensive wound on your hand proves you were in a prior conflict. The fact that you were shot in the back, after you had stopped to eat a full meal, suggests you thought you had escaped. It points to a personal betrayal, a rival who followed you, waited for you to let your guard down, and then murdered you in cold blood. You are the ultimate symbol of human violence, not the anonymous clash of armies, but the intimate, calculated, and deeply personal act of one human deliberately ending the life of another. For millions of years, your ancestors and their kin fought a brutal war on 2 fronts. There was the external war against the great predators of the prehistoric world, and there was the internal war against the invisible killers of disease, the agony of your own body, and the shocking cruelty of your fellow man. But there is a third, and perhaps greatest antagonist in the human story. It is an enemy with no malice, no hunger, and no motive. It is the planet Earth itself. For our next chapter, we will witness the moments when the indifferent, titanic forces of nature, floods, volcanoes, and cataclysms, unleashed their power upon our ancestors. To begin, we travel to the lush, tropical island of Java in modern-day Indonesia. The time is approximately 110,000 years ago. You are Homo erectus, but you are a ghost at the end of a long and glorious dynasty. Your species is the great success story of human evolution, the longest-lived hominin ever known, having survived for an astonishing 1.8 million years. Your ancestors were the first to walk out of Africa, the first to master fire, the first to conquer 3 continents. But your time is over. The world has changed. The open woodlands you once thrived in are shrinking, replaced by dense, unfamiliar rainforest. Newer, cleverer humans are spreading across the globe. You are a relict, a remnant of a bygone age, making your last stand on the banks of the Solo River. Your final day begins like any other. The air is hot and humid, thick with the scent of orchids and decay. The ever-present cone of a nearby volcano looms on the horizon, a silent, sleeping giant. But then, a low, guttural rumble echoes from deep within the earth. The ground shudders. A plume of dark ash begins to stain the blue sky. It is not the lava you need to fear. The true danger is the water. The eruption has destabilized the mountain's peak, and a torrent of volcanic ash and rock, superheated and mixed with rain and river water, begins to pour down the slopes. It is a lahar, a volcanic mud flow, a moving river of hot concrete that consumes everything in its path. It pours into the Solo River, which swells into an unstoppable, churning brown cataclysm. The wall of water and debris hits your settlement with the force of an asteroid. There is no time to run, no high ground to reach. One moment, you are living as your ancestors have for 1,000,000 years. The next, you and your entire community are swept away in a chaotic, violent torrent, tossed among uprooted trees and boulders. Your death is a quick, brutal drowning in a world turned to liquid mud. Your bodies are carried for miles down the raging river. In the chaos, your heads, being more buoyant, are separated from your bodies. Eventually, a dozen of them, along with a couple of shin bones, are snagged in a logjam or a sandbar, where they are buried under tons of sediment, a grim collection of the last of your kind. This is the leading theory for what happened at the archaeological site of Nan Dong, where this jumble of a dozen Homo erectus skulls was discovered in the 1930s. The geological layer they were found in is a classic high-energy flood deposit, and the strange collection of only skulls points to the sorting power of running water. The original discoverer of Java Man, Eugene Dubois, was a character so obsessed with finding the missing link, he once hid his fossils under his dining room floorboards. He could never have imagined the apocalyptic end that his prized specimens met. Of course, the exact cause of the Nan Dong deaths is still debated. While the dramatic lahar theory fits the evidence well, some scientists argue it could have been a more mundane, though still massive, seasonal monsoon flood that washed out a settlement or a burial site near the river. The debate isn't about the flood, that much is certain, but about the trigger. Was it a sudden volcanic apocalypse that wiped out the last of the Javan Homo erectus in a single terrible afternoon? Or was it a more routine cataclysm that simply gathered up the remains of a population that was already fading into extinction? Either way, the Solo River was the final instrument of your species' long and magnificent story, a powerful reminder that even the most successful and enduring humans are ultimately at the mercy of the planet they call home. The volcanic lahar that may have ended the reign of Homo erectus was a death of shocking speed and overwhelming force. But the planet's arsenal of natural traps includes killers that are far slower, more patient, and in many ways, more terrifying. To witness one of these, we journey to a place that will one day be the sprawling metropolis of Los Angeles. The time is 10,000 years ago. The Ice Age is ending, but this land is still home to mammoths, saber-toothed cats, and dire wolves. You are a young Paleo-Indian woman, a skilled hunter-gatherer, and you are about to step into a tomb that has been patiently waiting for you. This landscape is dotted with a unique and treacherous feature, natural asphalt seeps, which we now call the La Brea tar pits. Forget the Hollywood image of bubbling, obvious pools of black goo. These are far more devious. For much of the year, they are hard enough to walk on. But on a hot summer afternoon, the asphalt softens to the consistency of thick, sticky molasses. Covered by a thin layer of dust, water, or fallen leaves, they become a perfect camouflaged trap. Over the millennia, these pits have created the world's richest collection of Ice Age fossils, a sticky archive of more than 3.5 million bones from the countless animals who made one fatal misstep. But among those millions of bones, there is only one human. And it is you. We can never know the exact sequence of events, but we can imagine it. Perhaps your domestic dog, your companion in this wild world, wanders too close and becomes stuck, its yelps of panic drawing you in. Perhaps you are simply walking through the area at dusk, your mind elsewhere, and you don't notice the ground giving way slightly beneath your foot. At first, it is just an inconvenience. Your sandal is stuck. You pull, but your foot only sinks deeper. Annoyance gives way to a jolt of fear. You put your other foot down for leverage, and it too is captured by the thick, warm, incredibly strong asphalt. Now you are trapped. This is a death of slow-motion horror. The more you struggle, the more you twist and pull, the more entangled you become. The tar works its way up your legs, an inexorable, heavy tide. Panic gives way to exhaustion. The sun beats down on you, the heat making the asphalt even more viscous, strengthening its grip. The air is thick with the petroleum smell of the seep and the cries of other animals. A bird, a young mammoth, also caught in this living graveyard. Your struggles attract the attention of predators, the dire wolves and saber-toothed cats, who see you as an easy meal, only to often become trapped themselves as they lunge for the kill. Your final hours are a waking nightmare of heat, exhaustion, and the terror of being slowly consumed by the earth. When your skeleton was finally excavated in the 20th century, it told a complex story. Analysis of your bones revealed you were a young woman between 18 and 25 years old. Isotopic analysis showed a diet rich in game. But it also revealed something else. A healed circular fracture on your skull, evidence of a significant blow to the head you had survived years earlier. This old wound is the key to the great mystery surrounding your death. Was it a tragic accident? A simple case of you and your dog getting stuck in a place that had claimed millions of animals before you? Or was it something else? Some scholars have proposed your death was no accident at all. Given the evidence of previous violence in your life, was your body thrown into the pit after you were murdered elsewhere? Was this a form of ritual burial, your body committed to the strange, preserving earth, along with your faithful dog? The mystery of the La Brea woman is that all of these scenarios are possible. You could be the victim of a terrible accident, or the victim of a terrible crime. The only certainty is the nature of your tomb, a slow, patient, and inescapable trap laid by the planet itself. The slow, sticky death of the La Brea woman was a personal tragedy, but at least it was a story with a body. Now we venture to the very edge of the human story, to a time and place where the evidence is so ghostly, so controversial, that even the existence of a victim is a matter of ferocious debate. This is a story of a death that may or may not have happened. A faint echo from a chapter of prehistory that could rewrite everything we think we know. We are in what will one day be San Diego, California, and the year is 130,000 before the present. According to mainstream science, this is impossible. The accepted timeline for the peopling of the Americas holds that the first humans arrived via the Bering Land Bridge no earlier than 25,000 years ago. But here, a discovery was made that challenges that entire story. At a site named for the Keruti mastodon, archaeologists found the skeleton of the great beast. But its bones were not just scattered. They were smashed. The massive femurs were broken with spiral fractures, the kind that occur when a bone is broken while it is still fresh. Nearby lay several large rounded cobblestones, or hammerstones, that showed wear and impact marks. They were found next to other flat rocks that appeared to have been used as anvils. The scene suggested a hominin had been here, using primitive tools to crack open the mastodon's bones to get at the marrow. The problem? The geological layer was dated to 130,000 years ago, a full 100,000 years before anyone is supposed to be here. The entire Karuti mastodon site is one of the most ferocious scholarly debates in modern archaeology. Many scientists argue that the bone breakage could be the result of natural geological forces, or even damage from the construction equipment that unearthed the site. They point out that no sophisticated stone tools were found, just a pile of what could be naturally broken rocks. But for the sake of our story, let us assume the proponents are right. Let us assume that you were there. You are a ghost, a member of a lost migration. Perhaps you are a Neanderthal or a Denisovan, a cousin species that we know made it to Asia. You have somehow crossed into a new world, a continent untouched by human hands. Your death, then, must account for why we find the evidence of your meal, but not your own body. You are working at the mastodon carcass, which lies in a dry riverbed. You heft a heavy cobblestone, bringing it down with all your might onto the thick femur resting on your stone anvil. The bone cracks, and you begin the laborious process of scooping out the rich, fatty marrow. As you work, a low rumble begins deep within the earth, growing quickly into a violent shudder. This is a land of earthquakes. The tremor is not strong enough to harm you directly, but it unleashes a far greater danger. The shaking ground has panicked the megafauna. You hear a sound like thunder, growing louder, and you look up from your work to see a terrifying sight. A stampeding herd of bison or mammoths, their eyes wide with terror, charging directly down the river channel toward you. There is nowhere to run. The walls of the arroyo are too steep. The herd is a living avalanche of flesh and bone. The last thing you feel is the ground shaking violently, and then a crushing, obliterating impact. Your body is trampled into the mud, pulverized and scattered by the panicked hooves of the giant beasts, leaving no trace for future scientists to find. All that remains is the evidence of your presence, the broken bones of the mastodon, and the simple heavy tools you dropped in your final terrifying moments. Whether you were truly there or not remains a profound mystery. But if you were, your death was not at the hands of a predator or a fellow human, but a casualty of the raw, chaotic power of a frightened herd, a ghost story on the furthest fringes of our human journey. The prehistoric world was a landscape of dramatic, violent forces, but some of its most effective killers were silent, patient, and pervasive. One of the most common of these was the cold itself. To understand this creeping, insidious death, we journey to the heart of the Ice Age, to the vast, wind-swept plains of the Mammoth Steppe. The time is 20,000 years ago, the peak of the last glacial maximum, when great ice sheets thousands of feet thick have buried much of the northern world. You are a modern human, a Gravettian hunter, and you are a true child of the ice. Your people have not just survived here, you have thrived. You live in a world of unimaginable cold, but you have mastered it with breathtaking ingenuity. You wear expertly tailored clothing, stitched together from animal hides and furs with fine bone needles. You build insulated shelters, sometimes using the colossal bones and tusks of mammoths for your frameworks. You even have a rich artistic life, creating fired clay figurines of Venus while the world outside is frozen solid. You are the apex survivor in the harshest environment imaginable. But today, your expertise will not be enough. You are part of a small hunting party, miles from your home camp, tracking a herd of reindeer across the vast, treeless plain. The sky is a pale, brilliant blue, and the sun glints off the endless expanse of snow. But in the distance, a dark line of cloud appears on the horizon, and the wind begins to pick up a strange whistling moan. Within an hour, the world has changed. The sky is a bruised, churning grey. The wind is a physical force, a gale that drives shards of ice into your exposed skin and rips the warmth from your body. The snow begins to fall, not in gentle flakes, but in a blinding horizontal torrent. You are caught in a full-blown blizzard, a whiteout. Visibility drops to 0. You cannot see the person next to you. You cannot see the ground beneath your feet. You have lost all sense of direction. The hunt is forgotten. Now, the only goal is survival. Your body's first response is violent and desperate. You begin to shiver uncontrollably, a frantic muscular reaction designed to generate heat. Your teeth chatter, your limbs tremble, and your body burns through its precious energy reserves at an alarming rate. You and your companions huddle together, a small, doomed island in a sea of white, but the wind tears through your furs as if they were made of paper. As your core temperature continues to drop, the second stage begins. Your mind, starved of warmth, begins to fail. You become confused, disoriented. Your movements become clumsy. Your speech slurs. Logic dissolves. It is at this stage that one of the most tragic and bizarre phenomena of hypothermia occurs: paradoxical undressing. Your brain, in its final confused state, is flooded with false signals. The nerves in your skin, frozen and dying, send a message of intense, burning heat. You feel as if you are on fire. In a final delirious act, you begin to tear off your life-saving layers of clothing, exposing your skin to the killing cold and dramatically speeding up your own death. Then the final stage. The shivering stops. Your body has exhausted its last reserves of energy. The frantic fight is over. A strange and deceptive calm washes over you. The pain fades. You no longer feel cold. Instead, you feel a profound sense of warmth and comfort, an overwhelming drowsiness. You just want to lie down, just for a moment, and rest in the soft, welcoming snow. You close your eyes. It is a quiet, peaceful, and utterly insidious end. While it is difficult to find definitive proof of death by freezing in a skeleton, the context of a body found alone, far from shelter in the frozen landscapes of the Ice Age, tells its own story. Archaeologists still debate the extent to which your people could predict these sudden, violent storms. But your lonely death, and the deaths of countless others like you, is a testament to the fact that the cold was a patient and ever-present predator on the mammoth steppe, always waiting for a single moment of vulnerability. The deathly chill of an Ice Age blizzard was a slow and creeping killer, a personal battle against an indifferent environment. But the planet also possesses a far more violent and spectacular form of power. It has the ability to unleash an apocalypse, a cataclysm so vast that it can alter the course of life on a global scale. To witness such an event, we travel to the lush, tropical island of Sumatra, 74,000 years ago. You are an early modern human, or perhaps one of our close cousins, living in what seems to be a paradise. The rainforest is rich with game, the climate is warm, and life is good. But you live in the shadow of a monster, a mountain that is not a mountain at all, but a lid on a geological pressure cooker of unimaginable power. This is the Toba supervolcano. Your final day is unremarkable until the moment the world begins to end. It starts with a tremor, a violent earthquake that throws you from your feet and splits the ground. But this is just the overture. The real event is the sound, a continuous, deafening roar that is not a sound you hear with your ears, but a physical force that vibrates through your bones and threatens to rupture your lungs. You look to the horizon, and the great mountain that has dominated the landscape for your entire life is simply gone, replaced by a roiling, expanding column of black smoke and white-hot fire that is punching a hole through the sky itself, reaching up to the very edge of space. This was a volcanic explosivity index 8 event, the most powerful eruption possible on the scale. For comparison, the famous 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens was a VEI 5. Toba was thousands of times more powerful. For anyone living within 100 miles, death was not a possibility. It was an instantaneous physical certainty. You do not have time to run. You do not have time to comprehend what is happening. Before the sound of the main blast has even finished its assault, you see a wall of roiling gray cloud expanding from the base of the volcano. It is a pyroclastic flow, a superheated avalanche of ash, gas, and rock fragments moving at the speed of a hurricane. Your death is a fraction of a second, an instant of vaporization in a cloud that is hot enough to melt stone. You and your family, your entire world, are erased from existence. But your story does not end there. You were just the first victim. The true horror of Toba was global. The eruption blasted over 2,000 cubic kilometers of rock, ash, and sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere, creating a volcanic veil that shrouded the entire planet. Sunlight was dimmed. Global temperatures plummeted by as much as 15 degrees Celsius, ushering in a decade of volcanic winter. Plants withered, ecosystems collapsed, and the animals that depended on them starved. For the small, scattered populations of humans across the globe, it was a near-extinction event. The evidence for this catastrophe is found worldwide, from a thick layer of Toba ash in the Greenland ice cores to sediments on the floor of the Indian Ocean. This physical evidence is supported by a tantalizing clue in our own DNA. Genetic studies suggest that around this exact time, the human population crashed, reduced to perhaps only a few thousand breeding individuals, a population bottleneck from which we all are descended. The severity of this Toba-induced winter and its effect on human populations is one of the most contentious topics in paleoanthropology. Did it really push humanity to the brink of extinction? Or were we more resilient than the genetic story suggests? The archaeological record for a global crash is much less clear. But in the center of Sumatra, there is no debate. There is only a hole. The vast, placid Lake Toba, over 60 miles long, is the caldera the volcano left behind. A serene monument to the day the Earth unleashed its full, world-altering fury. The eruption of Toba was an apocalypse of fire and ash, a planetary fever that nearly ended our story. But the Earth has other ways to wipe the slate clean. For our final story of death by natural disaster, we journey to a world that no longer exists, a land swallowed by the sea. This is the story of a lost Atlantis of the North, and the great wave that erased it from the map. We are in the heart of what is now the North Sea. The time is 8,200 years ago. The Great Ice Age is long over, and you are living in a Mesolithic Eden. You are in Doggerland. This was not a barren, wind-swept land bridge. It was a vast and fertile plain, the size of the modern Netherlands, connecting what would become Great Britain to the European mainland. Your world is a rich landscape of rolling hills, marshy lowland, dense forests, and fish-filled lagoons. You are a hunter-gatherer, but life is good. The climate is mild, the resources are abundant, and your people have thrived here for generations. The name Doggerland, by the way, comes from the Dogger Bank, a fishing area named for the stout Dutch fishing boats, or doggers, that worked these waters centuries later, occasionally pulling up the bones of mammoths or the flint tools of your people in their nets, the first ghostly hints of your lost world. But there is a creeping dread in your paradise. For centuries, the meltwater from the last glaciers has been causing the sea levels to rise. Year by year, the sea claims more of your land. The coastline is in constant retreat. Hills where your grandparents hunted are now islands on the horizon. Your world is shrinking, and you are living on borrowed time. But the slow creep of the sea is about to be overtaken by a sudden, catastrophic act of violence. Hundreds of miles to the north, off the coast of Norway, a vast section of the continental shelf, weakened by the changing pressures of the post-glacial world, suddenly collapses. It is the Storegga Slide, one of the largest landslides in known history. An area of seafloor the size of Iceland slumps into the depths, displacing a colossal volume of water. It is the perfect recipe for a mega tsunami. In your camp near a coastal estuary, the first sign is not a wave, but an unnatural silence. The birds stop calling. You look out at the water, and you see something that defies all logic and experience. The sea is emptying. The water is pulling back at an incredible speed, exposing the seabed for hundreds of yards, leaving fish flapping in the mud. It is an ominous and terrifying sight. And then you look to the horizon and you see it. It is not a wave in the normal sense. It is a dark, churning wall of water, 30 feet high and stretching from one end of the horizon to the other, and it is moving toward you faster than a horse can run. Your world is a low, flat plain. There is no high ground. There is nowhere to run. There is no escape. The wave hits your world not as water, but as a liquid explosion. It scours the land clean, obliterating your settlement, shattering forests and carrying away every living thing in its path. Your death is a maelstrom of water, sand, and debris. In a matter of minutes, the heartland of your people is gone, washed away and submerged forever. The evidence for this event is undeniable. Geologists have found a distinct layer of sand and sediment, the tsunami's fingerprint, far inland along the coasts of Scotland, England, and Norway, all dated to this exact moment. The debate among geologists and archaeologists is not whether the tsunami happened, but how much of Doggerland it destroyed. Was this the final apocalyptic blow that wiped out the last of your people and your land in a single, terrible day? Or did it merely accelerate the inevitable, destroying the coastal populations but leaving a few survivors on inland islands, who watched their world finally sink beneath the waves over the next few generations? Whatever the answer, your death was part of a profound tragedy, the death of an entire world, a reminder that even the solid ground beneath our feet is a fleeting and temporary gift. We have journeyed through a gallery of prehistoric death. We have seen the work of monsters with claws and teeth, the insidious work of poisons and diseases, the shocking cruelty of our fellow humans, and the world-altering fury of the planet itself. We have explored the how of death in its many terrifying forms. For our final chapter, we turn to the deepest and most profound mysteries of all, the cases that defy easy explanation, the stories that force us to ask not just how our ancestors died, but what they thought about death itself. We begin by returning to a familiar, haunted place, the Cima de los Huesos, the Pit of Bones. You will remember this place. It is a 43-foot vertical shaft deep inside a Spanish cave, where 430,000 years ago, your ancestor known as Cranium 17 was murdered and thrown into the darkness. But his story, as grim as it is, only deepens the central enigma of the pit. Why was he thrown in there? And more importantly, what about the other 27 individuals found with him? How did a jumble of nearly 30 of your Homo heidelbergensis kin end up at the bottom of an inaccessible hole in the ground? Science has patiently ruled out the simple explanations. This was not a single catastrophic accident like a flood or a cave-in. The geology of the site shows no evidence of such an event, and the demographics are strange. The victims are mostly healthy adolescents and young adults, with very few old people or young children, which is not what you'd expect from a natural disaster that kills indiscriminately. It was not a carnivore's den. Unlike the hyena lairs of China, there are almost no animal bones here, and the human remains lack the telltale gnaw marks of a predator's meal. And people certainly didn't live down there. It is a vertical shaft, impossible to get in or out of without assistance, and it is completely devoid of the tools and debris of daily life. The only remaining conclusion is as profound as it is revolutionary. Every single one of those bodies was put there on purpose. You are one of the others in the pit. You did not die a violent death. Perhaps you succumbed to a swift illness or were fatally wounded in a hunting accident. You died up in the world of light and sound. But your story did not end there. Your family, your clan, did not leave your body to be consumed by scavengers. Instead, they performed an act of great effort and intention. They carried your body. They navigated the dark, winding passages of the Cueva Mayor, their torches casting flickering shadows on the limestone walls. They arrived at the edge of the pit. Perhaps they spoke words. The incredible preservation of the tiny bones of the inner ear from your kin has allowed scientists to determine that you had hearing nearly identical to our own, suggesting you were capable of complex vocal communication. Perhaps there was a ceremony, a moment of silent farewell. And then they let you go, committing your body to the deep, silent darkness below, to join the others of your tribe who had been laid to rest in the same way. This act, repeated over and over again, represents one of the earliest glimmers of funerary ritual in the human story. It suggests a conception of death that transcends the purely biological. But the great unanswered question of Cima de los Huesos is whether this was a burial or simply body disposal. Was this a profoundly symbolic act, born from a belief system that designated this deep, dark place as sacred, a gateway to an underworld? Or was it a purely pragmatic solution, a convenient and hygienic way to get rid of rotting corpses and keep dangerous scavengers away from their living areas? The single, beautiful, and entirely out-of-place hand axe, Excalibur, is the main clue that points toward ritual. But the truth remains elusive. Your presence in that pit marks a pivotal moment in our history, the point where your ancestors began to grapple with the meaning of the end, transforming death from a simple event into a profound and mysterious new territory. The Great Pit in Spain leaves us wondering about the dawn of ritual, the moment our ancestors began to see death as something more than a biological ending. But to find a clearer, more intimate story of how prehistoric people dealt with life's great challenges, we journey forward in time to a rock shelter in southern Italy. We are in the Grotta del Romito, a place made sacred by the presence of a great, beautifully carved bull on its walls. The time is 12,000 years ago. You are a young man of the late Stone Age, somewhere between 17 and 20 years old. And from the moment you were born, you have been profoundly different. You have a severe and very rare form of congenital dwarfism called achromosomelic dysplasia. Your mind is sharp, but your body is shaped by this condition. Your arms and legs are disproportionately short, your forearms and lower legs especially so. Your joints are malformed, making movement difficult and likely painful. In the world of the hunter-gatherer, a world that prizes speed, strength, and endurance above all else, your body is a liability. You cannot run fast enough to escape a predator. You cannot keep up with a hunting party on a long trek. Your physical existence is one of complete dependence on the compassion and patience of your group. In a purely utilitarian, survival of the fittest world, you would not have survived your first year. The fact that you lived to be a young adult is, in itself, a miracle. It is the clearest possible evidence that your people made a conscious choice to care for you. For nearly 2 decades, they fed you, protected you from harm, and carried you when you could not keep up. Your life is a testament to the power of human empathy, a story of a community that chose to value a member not for his physical prowess, but simply for his existence. Perhaps you contributed in other ways that left no mark on the fossil record. Maybe you had a talent for fine, detailed work with your hands, or a sharp mind for remembering stories, or a gentle way with the children of the group. When your life finally ends, your group treats you with a dignity that speaks volumes. You are not left behind. You are placed in a carefully prepared grave, laid to rest right next to an elderly woman, perhaps your mother or grandmother, who may have been your primary caregiver in life. Your double burial is a deliberate, respectful, and symbolic act. Your skeleton, one of the earliest and clearest examples of this rare condition ever found, has become central to a profound debate. The debate around individuals like you, Romito too, centers on your social role within the group. Was the care you received purely an act of pity and compassion, a sign that your people had a moral code that demanded they look after the vulnerable? Or was it something more complex? Some scholars suggest that in a world steeped in superstition and magic, a person with such a dramatic physical difference might not have been seen as weak, but as special. Your unique form could have been interpreted as a sign that you had a unique connection to the spirit world. You might have been seen as a shaman, a seer, or a sacred being, not just tolerated, but revered. Your careful, formal burial in this symbolically important cave, laid to rest with an elder, certainly hints that you held a special, respected status within your community. Your story is a powerful counterpoint to the long litany of violence. It reveals that even in the harshness of the Stone Age, your ancestors were capable not only of taking a life, but also of dedicating themselves to preserving one against all odds. The story of the cared-for child of Romito shows us a community defined by its compassion for the living. But what did death itself mean to our ancestors? to explore one of the most beautiful and mysterious rituals they created to confront the end of a life. We must travel to the El Mirón cave in the Cantabrian mountains of Spain. We are in the midst of the Magdalenian culture, 19,000 years ago. The Ice Age still holds the world in its grip, but your people, Homo sapiens, are in the midst of a spectacular cultural and artistic explosion, creating the breathtaking cave paintings at nearby sites like Altamira. You are a woman of this vibrant world, about 35 or 40 years old, strong and healthy. They would come to call you the Red Lady. Your death is not the central mystery of your story. You likely died of natural causes. The mystery is what happened next. Your community did not dispose of your body. They did not abandon it. They prepared for you one of the most elaborate and symbolically rich funerals of the entire Stone Age. At the very back of the large cave where they lived, there was a narrow, secluded space, set apart from the main living floor by a massive block of fallen limestone. Upon this stone, someone had engraved a series of lines, a mysterious V shape, marking this place as special. It was here, in this small, sacred chamber, that they laid you to rest. But they did not lay you in the cold, bare earth. Your funeral was an explosion of color. The scientific analysis of your grave is unequivocal. Your bones and all the sediment surrounding them are saturated with a brilliant crimson pigment. Your clan had ground a huge quantity of red ochre, a natural iron oxide clay, into a fine blood-red powder and completely coated your body with it. Red ochre was a precious commodity in the prehistoric world, mined and traded over long distances, and used in ritual and art for over 200,000 years. To use so much of it on a single person was an act of profound significance. But the ritual did not end there. Microscopic analysis of the soil around you revealed another, more delicate secret: dense clusters of pollen from yellow, daisy-like flowers. Your clan had not only covered you in the color of life, they had laid a bouquet of flowers upon your grave. This single burial opens a window into the minds of your people, revealing a deep engagement with symbolism and the afterlife. But the central debate surrounding ochre burials like yours is about its precise meaning. Why this color? Why this elaborate ritual? The theories are as rich as the pigment itself. Was the red color meant to symbolize blood? A form of sympathetic magic intended to restore the life and vitality that had drained from your body? Was it a plea to the spirit world for rebirth? Or was it more practical? Some scientists have argued that the iron oxide in ochre has antibacterial properties and may have been used as a primitive preservative, a way to prepare the body and slow down its decay. A third theory suggests it was simply a marker of your high social status. Perhaps you were a great leader, a wise elder, or a powerful shaman, and this costly and labor-intensive burial was the only fitting tribute for a person of your importance. We will never know for sure what your people believed. But as you were laid to rest in your crimson shroud, behind the marked stone, adorned with flowers, your funeral became more than just the end of a life. It was a statement. It was an act of art, of memory, and of hope. It was proof that your people had a complex answer to the great mystery of what comes after death, an answer painted in the most vibrant and enduring color of life itself. The elaborate burial of the Red Lady shows a people deeply engaged with the meaning of an individual death. But what happens when the one dying is not a person, but an entire people? What is it like to witness the slow, inexorable twilight of your own species? For this story, the last of our great mysteries, we will not focus on a single moment of death, but on a long, fading goodbye that stretched across 10,000 years. We are in Europe, between 40,000 and 30,000 years ago. You are a Neanderthal, and your world is emptying. It is not a sudden apocalypse. There is no great flood, no single cataclysmic battle. It is a slow, creeping subtraction. The winters seem to be getting colder, more unpredictable. The great herds of game that your ancestors followed for 100,000 years have changed their migration routes, becoming less reliable. But the most unsettling change is the new people. They have been on the edges of your world for generations, but now they are everywhere. They are taller and more slender than your kin, and they carry new kinds of weapons. Light, thrown spears, and deadly spear throwers that allow them to kill from a distance. Their camps are larger, their social networks more sprawling. At first, you avoid them. But as time goes on, your own people become harder to find. The valleys where other clans used to live are now empty, or occupied by the newcomers. You travel for weeks, seeking a mate from another group, only to find their caves abandoned, the hearths cold for years. The stories and traditions passed down from your elders feel thin. The links in the chain of memory are breaking one by one. Your kind, who had larger brains on average than the newcomers, had ruled this continent for 250,000 years. But that world is gone. You are living in the ruins, a ghost in your own homeland. Your final days are not spent in a great struggle, but in a profound and inescapable loneliness. The ultimate cause of the Neanderthal extinction is perhaps the greatest whodunit in all of human prehistory, and there is no single culprit. The first suspect is the climate. The era of your decline was marked by severe and rapid climate swings that would have disrupted the ecosystems you were so masterfully adapted to. The second is us, Homo sapiens. We were a new invasive species in Europe, and we competed with you for the same resources. With our more advanced projectile weapons, wider social networks, and possibly higher birth rates, we may have simply outcompeted you, a slow, inexorable replacement rather than a violent conquest. We may have also brought with us new diseases from Africa, pathogens to which your immune systems had no defense. But your story is not just one of disappearance. It is also one of assimilation. Recent genetic evidence has proven that your people did not just vanish. Before you disappeared, you interbred with the newcomers. A small part of you lives on, woven into the DNA of most modern humans outside of Africa today. That 1 to 4% of Neanderthal DNA in our genome is the last ghostly trace of these encounters. Eventually, your kind was pushed to the very edges of the world, to final refuges on the rocky shores of Gibraltar, clinging to existence at the southern tip of a continent that was no longer yours. Sometime around 28,000 years ago, the very last of your people died, and an entire chapter of the human story, a story of incredible endurance and adaptation, came to a quiet and lonely end. Your long goodbye is a sobering reminder that survival is never guaranteed, and that even the most successful and intelligent forms of human life can, in the end, simply fade away. And so, we have come to the end of our long journey through the landscape of prehistoric death. We have felt the teeth of the great predators and the slow, creeping agony of disease. We have witnessed the first murder, the first feast of cannibals, and the first war. We have been consumed by floods, volcanoes, and the patient-killing cold. We have stood before the graves of our ancestors and wondered at the dawn of ritual and compassion. Through it all, one question echoes from the deep past. Amidst all this violence, all this suffering, all this chaos, why did we survive? What was it about you, about Homo sapiens, that allowed you to walk out of the prehistoric night and into the dawn of history, while every other kind of human who had ever lived vanished into the silence? There is no single, simple answer. You were not necessarily the strongest. The Neanderthals were more powerfully built. You were not even the biggest-brained, as they had, on average, a larger cranial capacity. Your survival was a story written not in brute force, but in adaptability. You were a master generalist in a world of specialists. Your technological toolkit was more varied and innovative. While others relied on heavy thrusting spears, you developed light projectiles that could kill from a distance. You invented the needle to create finely tailored, layered clothing that offered superior protection from the cold. You created nets to catch fish and birds, broadening your diet and making you less reliant on the fortunes of the big game hunt. But your greatest advantage was social. You built larger, more complex, and more wide-ranging social networks than any human who had come before. Where a Neanderthal clan might be a small, isolated family group, your communities were part of a web that stretched across the landscape. This network was a superhighway for ideas, for resources, and for genes. It was a safety net. If one group was starving, another could help. It was a library, allowing technological innovations to spread rapidly. And it was all held together by a revolutionary new ability, a profound and all-encompassing grasp of symbolic thought. You painted your stories on cave walls, you carved them into bone, you buried your dead with flowers and ochre. You created a shared world of myth and meaning that allowed you to cooperate on a scale never before seen on this planet. You are the great survivor of this story. You are the one who remained. Every person alive today is descended from these tenacious, clever, and cooperative ancestors. The blood of these survivors flows in your veins. But this victory was not without its cost. We are the inheritors of their compassion and their creativity, but we are also the inheritors of their capacity for cruelty. As we became the sole human species on the planet, our conflicts did not end. They simply turned inward and grew in scale. The stories of the murdered, the massacred, and the casualties of war are our story too. The long, brutal history we have explored tonight is not the story of some alien them. It is the story of us. It is the deep, dark, and astonishingly resilient foundation upon which our modern world is built. And now, the long journey is over. The echoes of those ancient struggles begin to fade, receding back into the deep silence from which they came. The ghosts of that lost world, the great beasts, the forgotten peoples, the fiery mountains, all return to their slumber, fossils and dust in the quiet earth. The dangers that haunted every moment of your ancestors' lives are, for you, only stories. The night outside your window is safe. The cold is kept at bay. The monsters are gone. You can feel the weight of this long history, this unbroken chain of survival that led directly to you, resting here, now, in this moment of peace. Think of it as a great, slow river that has carried you to a calm and quiet shore. Let the current of that river gently rock you, Let the darkness behind your eyes be not the terrifying, predator-filled dark of a prehistoric cave, but a soft and welcome blanket. There is nothing left to fight, nothing to fear. All that is left to do is to rest, to drift, and to dream. You are the improbable, miraculous survivor of an impossibly long and dangerous story. And now it is time for your story to pause and for you to simply sleep and